You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, episode 20.
The Aikido culture, I think, and perspective is definitely changing, I think. In the mainstream conventional sense, I would say that for my own part, it's getting a little bit further away from the message than I would like to see it. I guess I'm a purist in that way, and I keep myself, for my own part, very, very close to the founders' expressed ideal that I and the universe are one. And that's the basis for my work.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
Today it's my pleasure to welcome Dave Goldberg to the show. Dave is an Aikido Godan and founder of Aikido San Diego. He teaches, practices, and embodies Aikido. Hello, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Angie.
It's very good to have you.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
I know there's a lot more to know about you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Aikido is mostly the center of my life, certainly professionally. You know, my direction in life, my life's work. I've been doing this now professionally for about 15 years, and it continues to evolve for me all the time. And I'm just now in my latest iteration of what it means to embody Aikido, which is my primary objective, and then to, of course, help other people do that. I also have twin boys, which are the other, a major part of my life. I'd say that's enough. It's enough for day-to-day life, no?
Plenty. For those listening that might not be familiar with Aikido, can you just give a little bit of an introduction about it?
Sure. Aikido, it's a martial art that's kind of a post-war phenomenon developed by a man named Morihei Ueshiba. It was also an evolution for him. He started developing it, of course, before the war. As a result of the terrific devastation of that time, it seems that he developed Aikido as an expression of his own inspiration, which was that martial arts can be a path of unification rather than division, a path of creativity rather than destruction, path of harmony rather than separation. The art is based on an ongoing principle of non-resistance.
So I studied with you a little on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
I like the description of Aikido being a more harmonious, free, and effective way to develop people.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a practice, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the art itself has an art form, which is in the context of martial arts. It's absolutely a warrior way, a do, if you will, in the Japanese sense of Budo. But the principle reaches all aspects of life. What I do is present it in such a way that when a person leaves the training area, they're still doing Aikido. It's still accessible to them in any form of conflict and in life.
Right. My experience was whatever was going on in my life was certainly very apparent on the mat in your dojo.
Yeah. That's what I aim to do, and I'm only getting more and more in touch with that, it seems.
So if you have cloudiness in your mind or confusion, or you're struggling with something emotionally or spiritually, you're going to see that same thing show up physically on the mat. And through those practices that you teach, I think that becomes more apparent to the student, and maybe they become a little more self-aware, maybe not on all those levels, but they are certainly clear that there's something here to play with.
Sure. I mean, look, there's always a relationship between our being and our action in life, and Aikido is one way to not only express that, but also be informed by it, to be clear about it. It attracts people from all walks of life because it's so inclusive in that manner. It's not just people who are coming to learn how to be ninjas,
Although some of you are very ninja-like, very stealth.
Sure, I got no problems with ninjas.
Right. Bring them on, right?
Be prepared for a perspective of it that's peaceful in nature.
Right. A peaceful warrior.
Yes.
So you've been studying Aikido for a very long time.
I started, I think, in 86.
That is a while, almost 30 years.
My first exposure to it was when I was 14, I believe. My cousin was doing it at Tufts University, and I was still obviously in high school, just starting. I had experiences with it here and there, but never really got full-time practice until 1986, I believe. Actually, 87 was when I started really full-time practice, but I had a little bit more exposure in 86.
And then at some point in time, you studied in Japan.
Yeah, in 1990, I went to Japan. I studied with a fair amount of the founders' students, and I continue to do that, actually. My teacher was my current teacher of the last, I would say, 13, 14 years is Robert Nadeau, who's up in the Bay Area and was a direct disciple of Morihei Shiba.
So you're one step from the creator of this practice.
Correct, in that sense, yes.
And are things changing as life evolves and we get further away from the creation of the practice?
Aikido, yeah, the Aikido culture, I think, and perspective is definitely changing, I think. In the mainstream conventional sense, I would say that for my own part, it's getting a little bit further away from the message than I would like to see it. I guess I'm a purist in that way, and I keep myself, for my own part, very, very close to the founders' expressed ideal that I and the universe are one. And that's the basis for my work, in the context of the art, of course.
Right. There's quite a spiritual nature, or at least in my view, of what happens in your dojo. I was exposed to Aikido at a conference, a Buddhist conference, Authentic Leadership in Action, and came back looking for a place that somewhat mimicked what I had been exposed to, the personal development side of Aikido. And it seems like there are certainly dojos out there that are just or more so just focused on the physical aspect.
Yeah.
But I didn't find that with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's generally true that mainstream Aikido these days is highly focused on technique. You know, I love technique. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there does come a point, I think. I'll speak personally. There came a point for me when technique was simply not enough to take me to a place where it was clear that Aikido had this to offer, right? Because it was always clear to me that Aikido is coded in spiritual principles. Even from just watching the technique and the energy behind it, it was always obvious to me from the very beginning, since a teenager. But, you know, that's all you're ever doing. There's not really a direction or encouragement or, you know, any support to investigate other dimensions. Then typically it's only going to take you so far. And I think, for my part, I'll just openly say that, you know, I think I'm seeing that right now in the Aikido world. And, you know, it's not ideal, but that's as it is, and I do what I do.
Great. Aikido is a hard thing to understand until you're there practicing it or seeing it as a part of a community. What would you say to someone that might be curious about Aikido? And I ask this because I was someone who never thought I'd ever be interested in practicing a martial art. Mm-hmm. And there's so much richness in that experience. How do you explain this to a newbie who might be wondering?
Well, Aikido, the aim of Aikido is to really practice a completely different paradigm of dealing with conflict. The paradigm that, you know, we're in as not only a species, it seems, and a culture especially, is one that is still based on meeting conflict with a certain amount of conflict. We still have very much a fighting mentality, even if we sort of deny it or do our best to work with those aspects of ourselves. It's still pretty much the way we do things as a species and as a culture. So when people think martial arts in the conventional sense, you think of fighting, right? And you think of offense and defense, winning and losing, all those sorts of things. Aikido isn't in that paradigm, right? Aikido isn't a paradigm that views conflict as a partnership, right? Where we don't have a winner and loser or an offense and a defense. We have what's called an uke and a nage, which is sort of like saying you're yin and I'm yang, and that's how we're going to practice. And then we're going to take turns, and I'll be yin and you'll be yang. And in so doing, what we're doing is taking a conflict, and then if you could think about it, any conflict you have, there's always somewhere, somehow, a common interest, right? We're taking the singularity of that conflict, and we're practicing two different aspects of it, right? A receptive aspect and a more assertive aspect. In the practice itself, learning how those two come together as a single movement. So, in the greater sense, let me put it this way, in the Tao Te Ching, there's a really nice statement that goes something like this. First there's one, then there's two, then there's the 10,000 things, right? And the 10,000 things refers to, manifestation, all the objects. That in Aikido we can call those techniques. There's endless, technical outcomes, forms that can be performed doing Aikido. The content of those is always yin and yang, this or that, right? Uke and nage, soft and hard, male, female, in terms of energies, qualities, things like that. And then those two come together to create some sort of unification, some sort of resolution, some sort of oneness. So it's kind of like, if you looked at the practice from that perspective, it's kind of like Aikido is reversed spiritual engineering. But for my part, I go in both directions. I work in both directions. I work from the so-called 10,000 things direction up, and I work from the oneness direction down. And that obviously requires some creative license and some innovation and willingness to do things a little bit differently.
Very nice. So I could talk to you about Aikido during our whole interview, but I want to ask you some questions about your own life. Okay. And if you don't mind, we'll just close our conversation, at least that part of our conversation about Aikido. I think we could say to anyone that is anyone particularly that's out there maybe struggling with relationships or struggling with parenting or struggling with their career and their coworkers.
Just struggling.
Any kind of struggle. Aikido is a good place to start because that struggle is always within us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anybody listening that's in the San Diego area, I would encourage you to give Dave Goldberg a call and come down and check out one of his intro classes to Aikido. Your life will be changed forever. But Dave, I want to know the inside story about you. Can I ask you some questions?
Okay, sure.
So I want to know about your life purpose. Do you know what your purpose is?
I'd say so. I've known a very long time what my life purpose is. It's just, it's evolved. I mean, it's one iteration after another, but I've always known the general direction. And I'd say I'm doing it. I mean, my life purpose has been I kind of knew very early on that I was on a kind of a warrior lineage of some sort. It was just inside of me. As I kind of evolved, I would say, it started to take on a peaceful nature. So, I'm doing what my purpose is. My purpose is to be exploring what it means, to be a warrior of a peaceful nature and to become a living, breathing expression of the art of Aikido and to, help others do the same and to help them forge themselves as such and to literally wake up to, their own true experience.
Whatever that might be.
Right. Well, in the context of the art, but it always crosses over. There's no way to avoid it. Right.
We are one being. Can you tell me about aha moments that told you this was your path?
There wasn't any one that I could sort of point to. I mean, there was that moment with my cousin that introduced me to Aikido. From that time I knew that Aikido was going to be a part of this path. My aha moments came in really kind of ordinary ways, and often from an engaged moment, so to speak, but a moment of reflection, of just being, where something just came to me.
Were there any life events that happened to you that might have pushed you in this direction?
I would categorize my entire childhood up through high school as one of those events. Just a very unsatisfying, ungratifying, unfulfilling experience. I would say my whole childhood, but those teen years were extremely unfulfilling and ungratifying. Really pushed me to, I would say, to follow my calling, no matter what it was. And at the time, that also included a certain amount of travel, which has since left my system. This path that I'm on, this peaceful warrior path that I'm on, is still very much alive and has been even since then.
And when you were your young adult life, were these difficult times related to your parents? Were they related to your friends?
Yes. Just life in general. And, I should add a lot of that angst, I don't know if I'd call it angst or whatever it was. Look, I've been a seeker since, well, at least I was. I can't call myself a seeker anymore.
You can't? You can't, Dave? You can't call yourself a seeker?
No.
Your whole life is devoted to a deeper understanding of yourself. And why? Why can't you call yourself that?
Well, because it's behind me now.
And what you were seeking has been found?
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
And what did you find?
The seeking in my life came in the form of an incessant longing, a longing for something more, something better, a sense of being in the flow, a sense of just being, peace. It was with me very, very strongly and really affected me. And basically, I suffered like everyone who's a seeker suffers from time to time. When I woke up to the realization that what I was seeking all along came in the same non-form or form, whatever you want to call it, as awareness itself, and it was right there in front of me. The longing dropped away pretty much, and now I sort of experience life from a completely different place.
It's interesting when that restlessness leaves your being.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a big ceremonious, blissful, now life is one big orgasm kind of a thing. It was really very ordinary, and there were no celebrations. It was just like, oh, thank goodness. It's like dropping baggage after so long. It's not like you go out and celebrate. You're just sort of relieved in an ordinary sort of way.
Do you remember what you were doing or what time and what was happening in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really important, though, I don't think. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I was simply home alone on a rainy day, went through my day and just, realized that it wasn't there anymore.
Very nice. And I think it's very important for other seekers that are still out there seeking to know that your aha moment didn't happen standing on the side of the Grand Canyon or in another country, or it happened in your daily life.
It's such mythology. It's like, the space in India or at the Grand Canyon is, somehow more holy than the space that's right here. It's always right here, Angie. It's always just right here. Zero distance from you.
Inside your heart, is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I'd go there. The heart is good as a pointer for your orientation towards your purpose or something like that. You look to your heart for your sense of calling and purpose.
No, that's okay. You were talking about that it's always right here. And I said in your heart. And you said, I think I'd say something different.
I don't know if I want to specify that it's heart. That's too small for it.
Can we say it's always in here in our awareness? Is that?
Yeah, it's just here. It's here, zero distance from you. It's zero
Right.
distance, right? You can't take a step away from it.
Is there a definition for it?
Awareness.
Okay.
The awareness
Good.
that is all. Conscious awareness.
So since we're here,
Mm-hmm.
what are your spiritual beliefs, and do you practice a religion?
No, I don't practice a religion.
Did you ever?
Yeah, I grew up in a conservative Jewish family, in the kosherest of homes. My mother was a cantor, and maybe that had something to do with it. If I'm being honest, I avoid religion like a plague. My views of modern, conventional, and I know that you and I both know places that are very unconventional and more in tune with the truer mystical nature of religion. I don't look to religion in the conventional, modern sense for any answers. To me, it has nothing to do with spirituality.
Mm-hmm. And what are your spiritual beliefs?
Well, it's really quite simple. Let me try and make it succinct. That Dave or Angie or whoever is living in a world of which we're living in a world that lives inside of what Dave and Angie really are. So the relative Dave and Angie are living in a world that lives inside of the absolute Dave and Angie, which is simply just our pure conscious awareness. And everything's made of it. It's a concept, right? And the concept can't be really understood without, sort of just going and taking a look. So it's a little bit tricky to connect to for people, I think.
Do you use any words to describe it? Would you call it energy? Do you call it the universe? None of those fit for you?
The universe is not big enough because the universe is in that awareness too. Everything is moving through us, Angie. Everything is in us and moving through us. I wouldn't, for my part, it's not a belief, it's an experience. So, it's hard for me, and it's more the rule than the exception these days for me. It's a taste I've had many, many times in the past, but in more recent time, it's much more of a rule for me than the exception, and that's the way I experience life, is that it's moving through me rather than me moving through it. So, at that point, it's really clear as day that everything is connected. So, it's really quite a simple spiritual explanation.
Why don't you think everyone knows that or feels that, experiences that?
Why don't?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all seem to be stuck. We're stuck in a belief that I am inside this body, you are inside that body, and not only am I inside it, I am that body, and you are that body. When we're that closed off from everything else, our experience with life, our general experience with life, tends to be fear, right? Tends to be separation, and it's easy to see how that happens. I forget where it was, but somebody was telling me a view on that, where, you watch a small child in front of a mirror. They do peekaboo at the mirror or something like that, and maybe you ask them, who's that? And they say something like, that's my friend, And then the adult, of course, screws it all up and says, oh, that's not your friend, that's you. And pretty soon they believe it, and then the pattern of suffering begins. And, when you're an adult and have had enough, you've suffered enough, or you're clear enough, or open enough, or have gotten rock bottom enough to surrender to some sort of process to change it. It'll just go on like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. For those of you listening, it's good to know that this is possible here on Earth. It's nice to hear you conveying such peace.
It's so much more accessible than people think, I think, because it's always right here at zero distance. We just don't see at zero distance. We see everything over there. Right? It's not right here. It's over there, and it's just not the truth. Right? It's just we just live by our relative experience. And we never seem to be able to get out of it. As long as there's that relative experience, there's always going to be, the this and the that, pulling on either side of you.
If you could only make 2 recommendations to people that are listening to how to access that, what would they be?
Pay attention. So develop some sort of a practice in paying attention to everything inside your body, what's happening around you and your experience with it. And trust.
How does one trust when they're in fear? How should they go about that?
That's a very good question, and in a practical sense, I really don't have an answer. I suppose when you've suffered enough, then there's nowhere else to go.
Right. I believe largely practices are so important for us, whether that be Aikido or journaling or spending time in nature or yoga or hiking.
Yeah, getting involved in a practice is always a good idea. You do have to be very careful not to let the practice become a kind of doctrine in some way. Every practice has a pitfall too.
Mm-hmm.
So practice, yes, absolutely. Let it be your special place to go to, your path of mastery. Any lineage or practice can also become a trap. And you want to make sure that you don't get sucked into the to that trap, which can also, begin to pose that, you get to some sort of a practice of some sort, and it looks like everything is just wide open, and it's a path to your freedom, your liberation, and peace, and this and that, and then suddenly you find out that right ways of doing things and wrong ways of doing things, and it becomes it could start to become build walls rather than break them down if you don't relate to it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to get into a practice, like Aikido or whatever, and for sure, but, make sure, if what you're interested in is waking up or living life more truthfully, which is basically the same thing, make sure that it's an art that points in that direction at least, okay, and doesn't hinder you from that. And, getting on some sort of a mindfulness practice like what I was explaining before is very, very useful. Something ongoing. Like I said, trust. Really, in the end, there's only 2 things you can do about anything, and as I've sort of have figured out over the years, and that's your best effort and trust. And I don't have a good answer to how do you trust if you live in fear? Well, how do you wake up if you live in fear?
There's really only 2 choices, right?
Yeah.
Faith or fear.
Pretty much. Trust and fear. They're opposites. So, take your pick. Just work at it. If you find yourself, faltering in that way or whatever, give yourself a break, note it, and move on. Try again.
Right. Right. And going back to just what we were talking about practice, my experience has shown me that whatever is happening, however proficient I am, whatever is in front of me, whether I perceive it to be good or bad or difficult, is the perfect thing for me at the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in that awareness that whatever is in your life is what you need and it's here to help you grow, then it makes the suffering a little easier to swallow, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So since we're talking about practices, I would love to know if you have a daily practice, which I know you do, and if you'd be willing to share that with us.
Yeah, well, I practice Aikido every day. 5 to 7 days a week I'm on the mat with my students. We're working this stuff out. So, I'm learning stuff all the time as I go too. I discover new things. And so, yes, I'm always practicing both the physical and, I'm always practicing Aikido in the body and mind and spirit sense. I also have an ongoing mindfulness practice, I suppose. I'm a regular meditator. I also just have I have this recent habit that I sort of gotten attached to, where I have this app on my phone that dings throughout the day at random times. It's randomized. It's basically just a call to attention for a few minutes, And
what do you do?
Well, I ask myself the question: what are you experiencing this moment being alive? And I just notice, right?
Nice.
I'm involved right now in this course of practice that's part of a research study. That's one of the exercises that came up, and I've been using it a lot lately. I really enjoy it.
Through study of Aikido or elsewhere?
No, it's elsewhere. It's through a I don't know if I call it a group or an organization or a research group that you could learn about at nonsymbolic.org if somebody was interested in looking at it.
Okay. And do you know the name of the app?
The one I use is called Insight Timer.
And it's free?
There is a free version, but you can't really play with all the doodads. You have to buy the actual app to do it, to use it more than just, at a very, very basic level. It's
right. Well,
cheap.
Thank you.
It's cheap.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else you do?
Not regularly. I mean, I've gotten in a habit lately of doing more, going out of my way a little bit more to, simply help people out with things when I could, more random acts of kindness and stuff like that, just because it seems to, make me feel better about about people in general and about life. I'll pick up if a hitchhiker doesn't look like a mass murderer, then I'll pick him up probably, or stuff like that.
Right. Right. Well, having practiced with you, I know you appear to be extremely stern and serious when you're practicing Aikido, but my observation is that you care very deeply about the people that are studying with you and their own development.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it's an amazing thing to see. I think that you're talking about the body a little bit. I think nutrition's pretty important to you, is it not?
It is. I try not to eat a lot of crap, obviously. My body responds, people respond to all different kinds of ways of eating. My body seems to respond pretty well to this so-called paleo diet, which currently I'm not very strict about. I try to stay on it as much as I could. My body really likes it a lot, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Is beer allowed? I can't remember on the paleo diet.
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
It is in your version.
An occasional one is. I don't actually drink that much.
Right. Well, sake is probably on the paleo diet more than beer.
If it isn't on the paleo diet, I broke it on New Year's Day.
Right.
Oh, well.
Life goes on. Can I ask you about money?
Sure.
So my normal question around money is, do you make more or less money since you found your purpose? But how do you feel about money in general? Do you feel supported? Do you feel like your life is rich?
Well, in money terms, my life is certainly not rich, but I have everything I need and want almost everything I have, so I'm not really too concerned about it. Fortunately, my wife makes significantly more money than I do.
Right.
I would say I make less money now than I did when, for instance, I was teaching. I used to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Believe it or not, I made more money as a teacher than I make now. But, it's I find what I make to be enough, usually. I don't really feel motivated by it, though, in any way. Mm-hmm. I do what I do, and I let that sort of take care of itself. I mean, I pay attention to it because it's a practicality, but I'm not motivated by the bottom line in any way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The reason I ask this question is I think there are many people that have a purpose and a passion that they know about, but they're afraid to leave their regular salaries. Yep.
It's just fear in a different disguise.
Right. So your wife, Deanna, who I've met several times, is, very accepting, very beautiful, very lovely lady.
Thanks.
My pleasure. But I'll ask you this about her and about anyone else around you. Have you ever experienced resistance from your friends or your family about what you do for a living?
Sometimes in subtle ways, but not sort of overtly.
I guess when you're talking to a 5th degree black belt, you're careful what you say. Is that true?
I don't know. I like to think that sort of stuff doesn't project any of those sort of fears that would prevent somebody from just speaking.
Do you think that's true?
I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I think so. I think I don't know if there's any question that, my students and others afford me a certain amount of, I don't know what the word is.
I would say respect and esteem.
Yeah, something like that, I suppose. And, it's nice. I can't say that there's resistance in any form that gets in my way.
Do you think that's related to the fact that you are so clear on what you're here to do and you don't have resistance inside you?
Yes, and the fact that I don't mind how other people relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, depending on who they are, I have a certain amount of care. I mean, I care how people close to me might relate to me in some way, but I also don't mind either. So, I'm not gonna. It doesn't affect me in any way. I don't. I'm not gonna pay it any mind in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It's
right.
What I'm. It's what I'm here to do, and I'm going to do it. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. May I ask you a lightning round of yes or no short answer questions?
A lightning round. Wow, like that Screen Actors Guild thing? Are you going to ask me what my favorite dirty word is and all that stuff?
Well, I don't usually ask that, but would you like to tell us what's your favorite curse word? Don't say it. Just spell it, please. We want to keep this a clean show.
Well, if I spell it, I'm saying it. Come on.
Well, just tell us what it starts with. We can figure out. What is your favorite curse word, Dave Goldberg?
Oh, it has to start with an F. Come on.
We can pretend we're on the Actors Studio.
Okay. Right.
Do you think passion and purpose are the same things?
No.
Do you think everybody has a life purpose?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy in igniting your life purpose?
Is it okay if I go in the slow lane of this lightning round highway?
Oh, well, do I have a choice? I guess we're going in the slow lane.
Okay. Just a little bit of a slow lane. To me, joy and purpose are kind of like two parallel rivers. So, I don't want to give an answer that necessarily indicates that, to me, they're one and the same. So here we have two parallel rivers. One is joy, one is purpose. And, occasionally they get connected by what I would call like your calling or, inspiration. And then, the rivers can connect. And it helps when that calling or inspiration is really authentic. And by that I mean that, it's coming from a place that is somewhat absent of the self-referential narrative or something like that. It's just there and it's pure and you know it. So when it's coming from there and it's calling to you and it's highly inspired, you're highly inspired. That joy can turn into purpose for sure. So I think what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to play this safe, Angie. I'm going to just say 5. And I'm going to let people decide for themselves what part joy plays and if it's being connected to their purpose or not.
Okay.
All right. Make sense?
It does, but I'd like to ask you a follow-on question about that.
Absolutely.
When you were deciding, I know we talked about this, when you were deciding that Aikido was going to be a major factor in your life, do you think joy was involved in that? Well,
it wasn't yet, actually. It resonated on a different level completely. It resonated on a level of meaning in some way, and it was clearly coded in some sort of, I think I mentioned it before, it was coded somewhat spiritually, but it was happening physically in this warrior way, and it was fascinating to me. So, I had a sense that Aikido was going to be a big part of my life before I even started practicing regularly. There was something about it that just resonated with me on a deep level. So I really didn't get into the actual joy of the practice until, quite some time after I had found it to be a meaningful thing in my life, fulfilling in some way.
I see.
Yeah.
Did you ever quit your job to follow your purpose?
Yes.
And do you think everybody needs to quit their job?
Well, they need to make a transition one way or another. If they're unemployed before they do it, then I suppose they don't have to quit their job. But,
right? Astute observation. All right. Well, we'll leave that one at that.
Okay.
Let me ask you one of my favorite questions. What brings you great, great joy in your life?
Okay. I'm going to take it slowly and again, if that's all right.
Well, you know, Dave, this is the lightning round, but I guess you have an exception.
I drive a Prius. I experience joy these days in kind of very tempered ways. You know, when most people think of, especially as you put it, great, great joy, they think of it in very sort of dramatic terms. And that also comes with an opposite often. And I simply don't really experience very often joy that way anymore, or sadness for that matter. The way I experience it is more in terms of sweetness, delight, wonder, fascination, the magic of something, being gratified, content. When I'm teaching a children's class and a child has this aha moment, or when I watch kids playing or something like that and it's all innocent, that's super delightful to me, and I connect well in that way to innocence. I find beauty in simple things, which is also very delightful. I get a huge hit from being in the flow of something, my Aikido or whatever it is, just being in the flow throughout the day or in an activity of some sort. To me, that has a sense of magic to it. I experience joy in a form of peace and contentment, but not in dramatic ways, either positively or negatively. And who knows, that might change, again one day. But that's where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. When you say magic, would you say that feeling of being in the flow is similar to being in some kind of altered state, or? It
can be, for sure. For me right now, I wouldn't consider it to be altered.
You consider it to be the natural place where Dave lives.
It's more of the rule than the exception these days. It's a sense of there's no separation. There's just one thing going on, right? So there's no I'm in here and there's something else out there that I'm dealing with, and there's a kind of cooperation between the two. It's far beyond that. There's literally only one thing happening when there's a sense of flow, and I really, really like that.
Allows you to be very present.
Very, very present. Yeah, I mean, those go hand in hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I don't think we qualify for the lightning round, but I think it was worth taking the time to talk about those things. So, last question for you. If you unexpectedly amassed a good-sized fortune, what would you do differently?
I would live on a very, very large piece of property. That's it.
You live on a relatively big piece of property now, but you mean 100 acres where no one could see you? What's the draw?
Yeah, the sense of spaciousness and peace. And I would probably also start running my classes from the property, put some sort of a facility on it.
People that are willing to live in a yurt on your property for a year to study with you, huh?
Well, I don't know. Did I say anything about yurts?
Well, I guess they have to live on the ground. Tough. You're tough. I don't think I'll be signing up for that.
How big is the sum of money that we're talking about?
Whatever sum you need.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever sum you need.
Well, then there'd be all kinds of austere but comfortable places to stay for not just them, but myself as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very nice. I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. Do you feel crowded in your life right now?
No, but I prefer spaciousness. I prefer to be in space. My preference is not to be among crowds or to be too much of a center of attention or anything like that. That's just, part of my inherent Daveness, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Interesting from a man who stands in front of a dojo teaching up to how many people can fit in there? 100?
That would be a pretty big crowd in here. I think the biggest crowd we could probably accommodate and still move around effectively for the practice is, 50-something.
So, but that's a lot of people for a man who doesn't want to be the center of attention.
Yeah, I mean, I feel at home when I'm doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't want to, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with crowds much bigger than that. But, of course, if they're all there for the same reason, it changes things for me a little bit. If we're all on the same path, it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. Mm-hmm. I'm not really one to be a spokesman for this sort of work. I operate much better at the retail level, where people are walking through the door and coming to me, and then we take it from there. I'm not much for going out of that place and bringing people in.
Right. But I know that it's a very interesting conversation, because I know that you do travel and participate in leading other retreats with other Aikido leaders.
Yeah, I collaborate a little bit. Yep. Yeah.
So, very interesting.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself an introvert?
Yeah, I would actually. Okay. In that sense, I suppose I am. But, again, it's just a preference of how I prefer to be with my time and energy. It doesn't prevent me from doing anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, just in closing, what should listeners learn from your life?
To pay attention to theirs.
Was there a time when you didn't pay attention to your own life?
Not to the extent that maybe I should have been. I think I especially early on when I was younger, I looked more outside of my own experience for answers. Look to your own experience for answers. It's your best teacher, really. But also, at the same time, it's always good to get involved in some sort of a practice that can offer some guidance and some assistance.
Right. Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal growth recommendations for people that are listening? Well,
I'm a little biased towards Aikido, but of course it has to resonate with the person. It's a selective group, I think.
Right, right. Do you have a favorite book that introduces someone to the practice of Aikido?
I don't, to tell you the truth, but there are some classic things out there that point in a pretty good direction. But the direction that I'm going in, there's really, I don't know of anything that's written from that perspective out there right now.
Well, we'll have to wait for your book. So get busy.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe one day. I do know somebody. One of my Aikido brothers I know has been working on a book for a while, and I expect that to be quite, not quite, but really good. And we'll see when that comes out, if and when he actually puts it out there. It depends what you want. If all you're really interested in is, ask yourself honestly, what is it you want? What do you want? Right? If all you want to do is get into better shape, then go get in better shape. If all you want to do is learn self-defense, then, go to, a place that teaches a self-defense course. If all you want to do is improve, your sense of relationship or whatever, then, do that, if you're looking for a certain, dimensionality, a certain broadness to your sense of growth, an evolution, so to speak, that can take you as far as you can imagine, then at least get into some sort of mindfulness practice and something that points in the direction of freeing yourself from whatever has been preventing you from going there. Just do it. Get into a practice of some sort.
Right.
And have some patience. It's gonna, it takes time. I mean, it doesn't take time, and it does take time. It takes time in the relative sense, in that you gotta push through the practices and actually do them. And sometimes those practices take time, take effort. Mess with our sense of what we want to be doing instead. Sometimes we get distracted from them. You got to have some fortitude. And, in the same time, it doesn't take any time because, in terms of what I was describing, it's right here, right now. It's just, how clouded are we in relation to it? It's not a matter of adding something. It's of just removing the clouds that prevent the sun from shining. The sun's there,
Right. Beautiful. Well, I could continue to talk to you for hours. Very interesting conversation, but I think we need to close for this particular interview.
Thanks, Angie. It was great.
Thank you. And before we end, please tell me how people can get in touch with you if they'd like. Maybe your website?
Sure. You can get in touch through my website. My email link is there, too. It's www.aikido, AIKIDO, as in San Diego.com.
Okay, aikidosd.com.
Yep.
And do you do, if someone wanted to check out Aikido, are you doing intro classes?
Right now, we're right in the middle of one of our, what we call Aikido 101. It's a 5-week term, and we're doing another one in September. But, people can come by any time and watch classes and see if it's something that resonates with them. They don't have to get involved doing one of those Aikido 101 courses first. It's just another option that some people choose.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Thank you for spending an hour with me today. It's been my pleasure to learn more about you and that everything is right here for all of us.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
This is Angie Swartz, and it's part of my own purpose to be delivering this rich content to you. I thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. I hope your life is enriched. I know that because you're listening to this show, that you're on some kind of a growth path, and I honor you for that. If there's another way that I can help you, please like my Facebook page at facebook.com/lifepurposeadvisor, or send me a message on my website at lifepurposeadvisor.com. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll speak with you soon.